VVilliam, Shake-speare. You are looking at the first 2 pages of the first of the 2 most sacred artifacts in the world of Shakespeareana. This is clearly the Shakespeare's sonnets, published in 1609. And on the left we've got a bit of a dog's breakfast of a frontispiece. I'm not quite sure why that's spaced out like that. And on the right we've got a very curious dedication that's got some moderately dodgy spelling, but it's essentially gibberish. It parses, but it's definitely puzzling. What's the point? It's set funnily, but they do that kind of thing. But there's usually with a reason. I don't quite work out why it's set like that. But just because it's set like that doesn't necessarily mean the contents are weird. But the contents of this are definitely weird. So it is a puzzle. Now, and it's puzzled the Shakespearean world for 4 centuries. Now, the magic cipher, if you like, the algorithm, the formula that you apply to this in order to make any sense of it is strip white space and punctuation and set in a grid of width to be decided. And that's it. So let's just start looking at that. So we've set that at 19, and I'll discuss that, why it's 19 in a bit. But the first point to make is that this is plain text, and as such we necessarily have a ideal distribution and frequency of our Scrabble letters. So if we're looking, for instance, for Elvis, now, one point that I need to make here is that I stole this text off the internet, and whilst I had to fix things like lie, because they've gone and fixed that to only, the U's should be, all the U's should be V's, but that's just kind of proof of that. You know, you can play this game at home, folks. So we've got Elvis there, we've got Elvis there, and we've got Elvis there. There's Elvis everywhere. It's you find anything you like that as a consequence of taking plain text and setting it in a grid. This is a copy of a Baconian presentation. I took from a presentation that's about 30 years old. And it's interesting for 2 reasons. One is that the Baconians were using this system, which is called a Cardano grid or grill. I'll come to... Cardano is a noted cryptographer of the 16th century, did this kind of stuff. There's a cryptocurrency named after him, actually. Now, this particular thing here is just a lot of rubbish. If the Baconian Society want this was detected in the sonnets itself, but if you'll give me the whole of the first folio, we'll send the money to charity. But if you'll buy at least 20 at about £100 a go, you can have as many of those as you like. This kind of stuff just turns up. What doesn't turn up is something like that, where we've got a specific, proper noun, but in vertical columns, in a defined pattern, if you like. Now, you just put some numbers on that. We're dealing with a specific 146 characters, and I need to make that point. We're not looking at the whole of the first folio or such like. We're just looking at this particular puzzle. But if we just take values for an E is around about 1 in 8 chance of getting an E, please, Bob. We'll look at what the possibilities are of getting these exactly there. and they turn out fairly high. You'll notice that Presley, with just its extra 2 characters, is much bigger than these other ones. But the thing is that those numbers are so big that I don't care where you put these on the page. You can jumble these around as long as they're just straight, because there aren't really that many places. So I'll just give you a pile of numbers. I reckon that you can take any list of 5,000 proper nouns, and you will not find 22 characters of that in vertical columns. I've said within the whole of Shakespeare's first folio, you're going to have trouble finding that anywhere in the British Library, frankly, and certainly in any book that might have anything to do with Elvis Presley. Let's get on with this puzzle. This is just a little bit of the Geneva Bible, and I wanted to just point out that it's all in English apart from Jesus, with a capital I. And a capital I is the first of a couple of symbols that we're going to use. So I need to impress on you that I for Jesus is a prominent religious symbol. IHS, I'm from a Methodist upbringing. Both my parents were lay preachers. I've been in quite a number of Wesleyan chapels. Those 3 letters are in all of them. There's very little in a Methodist church in the way of iconography. You'll see that in all of them. Sometimes like that. It means in hoc signo, and doesn't actually refer to the cross. It refers to the Chi-Rho, which we'll come to. Now, another symbol that I need to get across is a St. Peter's cross. This is St. Peter, and is being crucified upside down. Didn't want to set a trend. You'll also notice he's in quite a T shape. And this final thing that I need to get across is a Tau cross, a letter T. So a letter I, a letter T, an upside down cross, and in hoc signo. Right, apart from a T and an L, I'm ramming those home as important letters. IHS, and if you didn't know St. Peter was crucified upside down, you do now. So what? Okay, so we've got a letter D here, and that's actually John Dee's signature. So let me introduce you to John Dee, if you didn't know who he was, with his nice pointy beard and his cap. Well, here he is in an engraving with a nice pointy cap on. And indeed, you see, Mr. D was, well, it's believed the figure of Prospero in The Tempest is based on D. But you see, images like that, and this guy, and this guy are all based on D. Our image of a wizard is John Dee. It's even better than that. That's his secret little signature that he used in particular on sending letters to the Crown. Fleming apparently was aware of that. So yeah, he kind of pops up everywhere. So what's the big deal about this D here? Well, it turns out that John here has taken the Westminster and, in the form of an anagram, wrapped it around himself in the form of a map of Westminster Abbey, and he's in the cloisters. Yes, he has. Well, that's Westminster Abbey. We flip it round, getting a bit better. This thing at the top is King Henry VII's Sun Lounge or something, which is the last, I guess, Gothic architecture. I'm sure it's very beautiful. I have been there, but I think I was quite small. but so if you get rid of that and crop it, it's kind of looking there a bit, but it's still really, we found a face on Mars, but it's really interesting. An anagram of the Westminster, and it looks a bit like Westminster Abbey. Now, there is just happens to be where the Shakespeare monument is. That's there on this map. There's got a T there. There's a couple of other T's in there, but. So underneath here, we've got three letters ISH, and any scholar of ecclesiastical Latin will tell you the three middle letters of fishy, and we've got an I there, but it also means in signal hoc, and then, but you see, in reverse here, it says in hoc signo, and I insist on you that IHS is in every Christian church you've ever been in, if you look closely enough. Now, or it ought to be. And it's in reverse, as this is in reverse. And what I've discovered is that D is reverse mad. It may be a Hebraic. A reference to Hebrew, but John Dee likes reversing things. This is John Dee's signature. Yes, I know it's just a face on Mars at the moment, but everything has just changed. But you've just drawn an upside down cross. How can it have all changed? Well, that's a St. Peter's cross, isn't it? Right? It's an upside down cross. And inside, I've got Isle, and yes, that is how you can spell Isle, and I'll show you a document in 1600, and I've got a whopping great big cathedral over here, or at least I'm suspecting of it, so that's perfectly okay. And then I've got U's, which doesn't really seem to make much sense. Isle U's. It turns out that if you stick a dot above the Y, that means th. It's not ye olde, it's the old. So if we then take this Y and S, which are virtually next to each other, diagonally, and just swap them around, we've got Isle Sui, or Isle South. So now, I put the comma in there, St. Peter's Cross, Isle South, just for emphasis. So let's just go St. Peter's Cross Isle South. Cross Isle is a synonym for transept. I can show you a contemporary document where it actually goes Cross Isle / transept. So that's a South Cross Isle St. Peter's, South Transept St. Peter's. That's there. Oh. Furthermore, I've got in signal hoc to the whole thing. I've got 2 here. The Westminster. That's it. There's an at. I haven't bothered labouring those, right? But it does happen to say at there. South Cross Isle St. Peter's. We're on a book of poetry. Wonder what's there. So we now need to very, very briefly do the Shakespeare authorship question. So you've heard that Francis Bacon is associated with the works of Shakespeare. There are acrostics all over the first folio saying Francis Bacon, Francis Bacon, Francis Bacon. So, and there's a number of other reasons, principally is association with Freemasonry, which is associating him with the works. Now, there's also Christopher Marlowe, and you'll have heard of Christopher Marlowe with relations to the works. And actually, in terms of your kind of grammar school boy thing, this guy is your Shakespeare. He's son of a shoemaker, and he chiselled his way to Cambridge with nothing. So, but there are reasons. Not least that he appears to die in 1593, that we don't think it's him. And then there's this guy, Edward de Vere, excuse me, who, when I first saw him, which was only a few months ago, I referred to this one as Posh Boy. I'd never heard of him. I had heard of the Earl of Oxford. And those 3 names, Bacon, Marlowe, and some people think it's the Earl of Oxford, and as soon as you say that, it's like, oh, I'm not interested now. I do not want it to be the Earl of Oxford. I do not want it to be him. and the other two don't quite add up. But I mean, that said, I don't really know. But those are your principal candidates. I'll come back to this later. I just need to give you... I mean, you know where this is going. So let's get back to the page and see if we can find anything. And right next to it, it says, lies here, which fits with our narrative now, because we're pointing at where they bury all the poets, and we're on a poetry book. So lies here. Oh, I wonder what lies here then. So there we go, lies here. And de Vere, lies here de Vere, and furthermore in signo hoc. So we put that on the whole thing, and we connect them together, and it all points to there. To the Westminster at South Kensington, St Peter's, Westminster Abbey. Lies here de Vere. Right. If you are of a mathematical bent and you wish to tell me that is an accident, and there's a lot more to come yet, there are 146 characters in this puzzle. So you can jiggle those around in any way that you can formulate and come out with something, and we have a long way to go. But just that, right? You try and tell me that is it, and I'm not interested in what book club have to say. You have to provide a counterexample, right? So for the next bit, just to complete this this first message, I do need to ram a little bit of Latin on you. I'm not a Latin scholar. I'd never heard of Elison, or whatever they say, but I fetched up an order of mass, and I think anybody that's ever been into a Catholic church on a Sunday morning will have heard the word Elison repeatedly, and it means mercy. Now we've also got a TV aerial here, which is the I-iter Christogram, I and an H. I can't be bothered doing a dissertation on that. And the other one I need to get across is Iesum Veritas Venit. And I know about Veritas because I'm a software engineer and I've sold a lot of their discs. Because I'm quite an old one. Veritas Venit. My I, and we've already had an I, and these other two are going to turn up in I, and we're going to have three I's. Google Translate. Google isn't very good at Latin, but the truth comes into Jesus. It's the fundamental Christian tenet. Iesum Veritas Venit. Slap bang in the middle of this, in the centre, that's where Jesus is, in the middle. Vertically and horizontally, I have a shape which has vertical and horizontal symmetry, and it has an anagram, and I don't care. This is something for the numbers people who will be familiar with it. An anagram, the factorial of 7 is nothing compared with roughly 15 to the power of 7, right? So you can stuff it, in terms of the probability, it doesn't matter that it's jumbled up. But we've got then nicely there. So that's the first of my eyes. And then, slap bang right next to it, we've got Elison, and we've got the I-iter Christogram here, and this is an anagram of Elison. So we've got Christi Elison, and then with our TV aerial, and then of course this is part of 3. So just this, forget Westminster Abbey. I just want you to do that, right? As something similar to that as your counter example. The numbers on it are just from a different universe, right? You will not find that, and it doesn't matter that these are anagrams. This is plain text, though, so and that is a high value proper noun. I have three eyes, which is the symbol of the Trinity. It's the number 3 in Roman numerals. It is. So we slap all that on. Actually, I've taken the wrong shot. I should have Edison on there. And so, but the question now is, well, yeah, but why? What are we, why are we going to all this trouble? I need to just explain a little bit about this horrendous image. We'll go into a little bit more of that very briefly later. Now, you see, that is from the first folio. And the first folio, as I've described, has Francis Bacon's name scrawled all over it. It's daubed over the whole thing hundreds of times. Right, so why? It doesn't say Francis Bacon wrote it, it just says Francis Bacon, and the Rosicrucians and all this other stuff, but no elaborate message. Now, also, Francis Bacon, independently by the Francis Bacon Club, the Baconiana, or whatever they call it, the Francis Bacon Society, I mean, this guy's a major figure, associate him with Freemasonry. And lots of people think that one of the original big cheeses, if not the big cheese in Freemasonry before it sort of became public in the 18th century, was Francis Bacon. Now, also independently, Freemasonry and Shakespeare. Shakespeare is very closely related to Freemasonry. Freemasons like Shakespeare. There's nothing, what's wrong with that? It's good stuff. We know that the Freemasons kind of quote Shakespeare a lot, and we know that Bacon's written all over it. So, the Freemasons. Let's bring the Freemasons and their big letter G into all this, and they're quite a secretive outfit, aren't they? So, well, maybe not quite that secretive, but here's two pieces of iconography: a triple tau cross, which you have a baseball shirt made from, and you can have this, which is a 32nd degree Mason Master of the Royal Secrets. Ooh, Masonic dual face mask. So there we go. So the triple tau, or I believe clavis ad thesaurus, which my tutor tells me means key to the treasures. It can also mean templum hierosolima, Solomon's temple, and can be represented as a T and an H. Here, this is the symbol of Holy Royal Arch Freemasonry, which is one of the, as I showed you, the 32nd degree. This is a special. And one of the, one of the founding lodges of Freemasonry, from what little I know about Freemasonry. And this is our 40 cross, or whatever we want to call it, which I believe can be represented as THT, but it's the Master of the Royal Secrets symbol, whatever the Royal Secret is. Now, John Dee refers to the tertiary concealing the quaternary, and the idea is that's been presented to me is that there's a concealed fourth T within the triple tau, and if we reveal the fourth T, the secret fourth T, then that is the we got the 40 cross. This was originally in black, so yeah, I had to kind of change that. It wasn't very good. Change that to purple. So I wanted to just give you this 40 thing. 40. Yeah, that's the kind of stuff that they do. I just wanted to represent. It doesn't really matter how we get to 40. 40 is one of two numbers that are part of Edward de Vere's digital signature. Anyway, let's try and find this cross, this Masonic cross, and we've already got this. You see, that's right, and we've got de Vere in very conveniently in a kind of a fourth T position. So why don't we take one of these I for Jesuses and see if we can put it horizontally and see what we get. And inside there, it says, heed Vere's paternity lie. Now, yes, there are hundreds of thousands anagrams. Well, there are hundreds of thousands of anagrams, not essential ones. How many of them make any sense whatsoever? I would have to go through, but it'll be less than 100. Have any relevance? Maybe more than 100, but definitely less than 1,000. But have any relevance? Well, we'd have to go through them. That has relevance. There may be another one that's similar. Underneath it, in this wonderful masonry, we've got insigno hoc, TH, also THT. We've got this TTT. I don't think I impressed you that that's the triple tau. The triple tau can be represented as 3 T's. And it says fourth. I've got the fourth T. De Vere is the fourth T. Now, I think that's quite pretty. So what's the secret? And in order to find out, we need to look at what's the content of these sonnets are. And the first 17 of them are about the fair youth, I'm told, and the dark lady. Our candidate for the fair youth is this character. He's called, well, Henry Roseley. I want to call him Risley because I want to say he's on remand in the centre of the Tower of London, which he is. Now, our candidate for the Dark Lady here is somebody called Penelope Rich. Now, it doesn't have to be Penelope Rich. I'm more bothered about this Henry Roseley. That name is on the Wikipedia page for the sonnets. So if that turns up on this page, on this grid that we've arranged in a pattern, that's definitely quite a coincidence. Now, these two people are connected via this man, who's called Robert Devereux, but he also likes to call himself the Earl of Essex, and Henry here the Earl of Southampton, and they've been involved in the Essex Rebellion. Robert here has lost his head. Apparently the last thing he said was, we'll see if that works. I have no evidence that his last words were in a John Lydon voice, but he's also connected to Penelope by the fact that they're brother and sister, so that's interesting. But more interesting is that they're also connected to via this man, and we now know, or strongly suspect, that Edward de Vere, 17th Earl of Oxford, wrote Shakespeare and therefore wrote the sonnets. Well, wrote these sonnets anyway. The sonnets are written in the first person, and they're written to Henry here. That should be just an arrow, therefore. And he's very strongly encouraging Henry basically to get off with Penelope here and make a baby. Now, the kind of scandalous thing about that is that what I'm being told is that Penelope Rich at one stage was Edward de Vere's mistress, and that he would claim that Henry de Vere, the 18th Earl of Oxford, was her child. And of course the only problem with that is we're not quite sure who the dad was. So that's potentially the scandal. I don't think that this is actually the scandal. I think it's just part of it. I don't think this is the real things deeper. Lucky numbers. They're not lucky numbers. 17 and 40. I gave you the 40. The 17 is the 17th Earl of Oxford. Now, there are dozens of ways, literally dozens of ways, that these numbers can be created from De Vere's name using hermetic arithmetic. The trouble with going through all that is it just becomes confusing, and you just think, well, you can make anything happen, and to some extent you can. It doesn't really matter. The fact is that 17 and 14, it is a fact, are repeatedly used to reference De Vere. Now, a final bit of Latin, I'm not going to apologise for this because you just look this up. Decessit sine prole mascula means died without male children or without male issue. Sine prole en, well, that just turns up in genealogies. Because it's bad news. If you've no male kids, then there's nobody to run the army, and your family have lost everything because you're no use. So if we go back to the main page now, I forgot the GG here, which I haven't filled in. I didn't fill it in. So I'm not sure if that's God the Giometer, but it is a valid part of that. We got this a Petrine cross. It's an upside down cross, and yes, of course, it says Sine prole en inside. So I've got a cross, and because it's a Petrine cross, that is that does allude to an upside down St. Peter's cross. So that's possibly. But across it here, we've got ipse. Now, that is an anagram of pies, but I'm also sure that in Latin it means himself. And outside there, I've got E and O. And I have seen an instance, a printed instance of Edward de Vere, Edward Oxenford, Edward the Earl of Oxford, that he signs his name E.O. So now de Vere was also referred to, I'm told far more than anybody else in his era, as Apollo. Apollo is the god of oracles, etc., and music and the arts. Also, of course, it's a symbol of American male regenerative power. So let's see if we can find an absolutely massive Saturn V on the diagram, and there it is. That should be a V, and it says Vere's line. So that's great. Now, whenever we're examining a Saturn V, we need to have a look at the testicular region, and we've got an H and a W, and isn't that a coincidence? Because they just happen to be the initials of Henry. There we go, Henry, and then what happens to the W? Where's the others? Can we see that anywhere? Yov Esley. Now, okay, it's in diagonals, but really all I've done is I've broken that once and this twice. It doesn't really matter that, there's 3 times as many diagonals less than there are verticals. So once we've worked out the numbers on this, which is vast, I think it's pushing 10 to the 20, I think, it doesn't really matter that I've chopped it up a little bit. And it doesn't really matter anyway, we're way past this, but he's managed to write Henry Risley across there. And there he is, John Dee in the chapel. Now, I haven't even completed this. There's a further one across here of the scales of Libra. You'll notice it says N-pi there. Well, that can also be Henri, can't it, without too much brain power. And this ensuing son, we have to use double N. I don't like that, but you've got a rose there and a tila there, which is following for cloth. And there's a further crossover here, but really, if you just look at these numbers again, I just ran those back at you. All we're really looking at is this, essentially. That the rest of it is there. I have to try and interpret it. That doesn't need any interpreting. That just says Edward de Vere is Shakespeare. Okay, let's have a look at the front of this and just see just how much information. There's far more in this, you see, because that's in 624s, and if we take the 6th, the 2nd, the 4th, 6th, 2nd, 4th, We get these sonnets all by Ever the Fourth T, which is these sonnets all by Vere or Vere. I don't care. You can just say you can keep it at Ever, but if you're still in denial, you need to go back and find a mathematician. That is, as we know, the symbol for Royal Freemasonry, and their big secret is the fourth T. Now, if we take if we delete the dashes and treat those as one word, which is not what we were doing before, then we get these sonnets all by ever-living, well-wishing T, which is these sonnets all by eternal, benevolent, and T is a religious symbol, so we're going to have that as God. And there's this message, which I'm now going to repeat on the front page, of these sonnets all by God and De Vere. Now, there are further encodings in here. This is an anagram which, when you've reset it, this whole thing turned upside down is a funerary urn, and I can show you other examples of where in a dedication to the deceased, you would set the dedication out in something like a funerary urn. So that all now makes sense. Now let's just get on just finally to this this front page, which is looking rather suspicious now. Now those two T's, apart from that I've got a funny T here, I've got a dot there. These are all chopped out of a blow up of the same size. So I've got the imprinted here. The full stop is noticeably bigger than that. But if I look at the G, the full stop on that is absolutely massive. I mean, that's the first one that you notice. You notice that that's huge, and then that's quite big as well. So those two are quite big. Now, also, I mean, this has always looked a little bit raggy. This typeface. But these lines here are also very raggy. Why are they not the same length? You can see that they aren't the same length. You may have just decided to ignore it, but they're not. And if you'd taken that to a paste-up artist, he'd shout at you, he or she. Believe me, I've been there. So why don't we just draw a big thick line between those two dots then, and then whack a circle around it just for a laugh, and assume that that's a diameter. We'll find out that it goes exactly through the ends of these two and straight through two full stops. So there's 4 points there, but this is a diameter. That counts for 3 points. That is a circle. We're just not quite sure why we've got a circle. Why we've got a circle? Well, you see, if we put another X, another sort of perpendicular line across there, then in the search of a Chi-Rho, actually, we get by G, it's a completely different font, by God and, that's a plus sign, D-E, V-E, R-E. I'm sure you can work out what that says. But yeah, Chi-Rho, that is in Sutton Hoo. That's apparently, that's written in the clouds. We've got a P here. I wonder if that works. What happens if we draw a line straight through the back of that? Oh my word. It goes directly to this T next to this kind of ox-shaped T. Oxford D. Yeah. Now, if we look at the ratios of those, I don't actually have the map of Poets' Corner, but essentially, if we fit that, you'll have to scale it on to the columns of the south transept. That point is exactly there, which is, and I've quizzed the de-encryptor a little bit about this, because it's like because it seems so obvious now, but War insists that you just didn't realise that Edward de Vere is buried right under that monument. So, what am I being told? In the 1580s, there was a scriptorial where anybody and everybody that was any good gets sucked in, and is why there's so much kind of authorship debate, and why there is so much content in it. At least 280 books, I would imagine far, far more that can be proven. But the number of books that would have had to have been read, that will have been read by the number of people that actually contributed to Shakespeare, is virtually everything that was ever that had been printed at the time. Now, in 1591, apparently bad things happened, and in 1593, the Shakespeare quartos start. Henry de Vere is born, and Marlowe dies. So. So in 1599, Edmund Spenser is buried at a very judicious spot relative to Chaucer and this spot. So where we are in 1604, or where we'll be in 1604, where we are in 1599, if you like, is in that point is the altar of St Glades's Chapel. That wall isn't there, but there is a wall, another sort of 15 foot or something behind there, and there's a wooden wall fencing to our left. Now in 1604, on the 24th of June, apparently, de Vere dies and is buried in Hackney. Poor thing. And the quartos stop. We don't seem to have any new quartos. We've got reprints and stuff. And I said the works amended, because we're trying to bend Tudor society to fit into some illiterate bloke from Stratford. You're going to have to work that one out. If there's anything from the gunpowder plot, well, this guy didn't put it in, did he? 1609, the sonnets are published. Now, I'm not sure about this, but I think War has told me that it's not until 1619 that de Vere is actually put in here. So that means, this stuff that I've just shown you on the sonnets is a manifesto. It's like, this is what we will be doing. And now in 1623, the first folio is published, and that is a very, very contentious period in it's the Spanish succession crisis, the Elephant and Castle, the Infanta de Castile, and a lot of oohing and ahhing about that, as we're not too keen on going through the last 100 years again. So now in 1717, I know the whole of the 18th century starts with 17, but in 1717, we've seen that 17 before, on the 24th of June, Freemasonry announces itself as no longer a completely secret organisation. So, what's interesting then is a couple of years, just 2 years later, I think, this wall is built. Not this monument, just this wall, and a guy called Pryor is buried on the other side. Now, without any evidence, I just suggest that this wall, I think, sinks a good 10 foot down and forms part of a reinforced tomb around Vere in order to complete this thing there. But either way, in 1740, the monument is erected. Now, it'll say 1741. We've got this issue about the Gregorian and Julian calendars. In the Gregorian calendar, which we don't adopt officially until 1752, it's 1740. Now, in that same year, Royal Arch Freemasonry apparently announces itself. And in this same period now, David Garrick is dispatched off to Stratford to go to begin this religion, and Shakespeare as scripture will be rammed into schools, and this whole myth business will kick in, and we'll all start telling ourselves about this grammar school boy. Now you'll notice that he's got his legs crossed and he's got his elbow out, and actually that's a 4, but it's also a P, and that's an X, but it's also a 10. So I've got my Cairo, and I've also got 40. There were originally 17 spears all the way around the bottom of that. It'd be nice if we put those back. Why? Why did you do this? Why does any of it matter? And why don't you know about it? So the why he did it feeds into why does any of this matter, I guess. And I'll attempt to address why the hell you don't know about it. So this woman is involved to a greater or lesser degree. This is one of my favourites, most ridiculous pictures of her, and bragging about how much money Francis Drake has managed to bring her, that she then doesn't want to give to the people that have risked all to defend their country. It may also to do with this man who, as we can see, is wearing the most expensive pair of curtains ever made, and that's because he's got all the money. This is William Cecil, apparently, and he and his family will now be replacing the aristocracy that has slaughtered itself on the fields of Taunton and at Bosworth and elsewhere, and is kind of taking over the country. But what I'm being told, this is a picture I believe from painted by Bruegel, I think, from the correct century, and we've got John the Baptist here looking very pious and in his rags, religion is as much as politics, and anybody not wanting to claim to be the king or what have you is as very important part of this as well. That's what I'm getting across. That's what I'm being getting across. Right, so in order to find out why you don't know, I just need to go through a little bit of 20th century history of the research of the subject, and I need to introduce the Baconians. And here are a bunch of fantastic Baconians spelling out knowledge is power in a Baconian code. I'll explain a little bit about that later. George Fabian and Elizabeth Wells Gallup were two very famous Baconians. And George Fabian is a philanthropist and has set up the Greenbank Laboratories. Rather amusingly, the pair of them have this hobby of trying to prove that Bacon is Shakespeare. And in 1915, a guy called Selig, Colonel, everybody's a Colonel, Colonel William N. Selig, sues Fabian for persistently saying that Bacon is Shakespeare. So he takes him to court, and the trouble is, you see, Stratfordians, is if you're going to turn up in a court, you're going to need to bring some evidence. So he loses, and Richard Tuttle rules that Bacon is Shakespeare, which can't have gone down very well. Now, excuse me, George hires this guy, William Friedman, and Elizabeth had been employing Elizabeth, that's the correct spelling, Smith, to go and hunt for Bacon and Baconian ciphers in the works of Shakespeare. Now, as I say, there are what I would regard as fairly easily detectable acrostics, Bacon written down the margin of the first folio. So it's kind of begging you to kind of look further. And these two have a real good look. They also have a real good look at each other, because the only real product out of all of this is a 50-year marriage between these two. And they would go on, both of them, to be notable cryptographers in the first half of the 20th century. And certainly this guy is I think he's called the Deacon of American cryptography. But they find nothing in as far as the Baconian stuff is concerned, because they're looking for the wrong guy in the wrong place, using the wrong technology. It's not a military cipher that we're trying to find here, which is what they're looking for and what they spend their lives finding in other places. So this Baconian cipher is very simple, and you can just spell out letters using like two different typefaces or font sizes. Here we've got people looking at the camera or not looking at the camera, so and everything's split up into 5-bit numbers, a nibble and a bit or something. So that's 16 plus 4, which is 20. Yes, that is a W, because we're computer guys and A is 0. And I and J are the same, and so are U and V. So in 1920, then, so this guy appears. This is J. Thomas Looney. I wanted to call him Loney and say that's how the Macans pronounce it, but they don't. It's his family say Looney. So he's from Sunderland, I believe, he correctly identifies Shakespeare as Edward de Vere, and does so from first principles. He just looks for someone based on the works, and is someone really posh, really well educated, and very much involved with theatre. Now, I also need to introduce you to this building, which, as we can see, is a beautiful sort of Jacobean wooden panelled vaulted hall, except of course it's the Folger's Shakespeare Library in Washington DC, opened in 1932, and it is the Fort Knox of Shakespeareana. This guy, another American philanthropist and Baconian, just prior to his death, he renounced his Baconianism, but he didn't actually say what he'd renounced it for. And he collected all the Shakespeare stuff and put it in a box to be put in there. Now, amongst the things that he bought was this picture, which apparently now is not Shakespeare at all. It's somebody else, and we found a crest here that says that it's not Shakespeare, and it's not Edward de Vere either, because it's got this crest on it, and it was examined in the 1970s. But they won't let us have a close look at it, and it's one of these things. I mean, you can just tell by all this dark everywhere that it's been painted over dozens of times, and we'd like to have another very, very close look at it now, but they won't let us. Whether or not it's that guy, I don't know, but he looks a bit like him to me. Now another thing that they've got in here is, which they very kindly put online recently, is a copy of the Geneva Bible, essentially the first mass-produced English Bible, a big bestseller, and it's incontestably once belonged to Edward de Vere, and it is festooned with markings, underlinings relating to the works, and I'll come to this more later, but it's quite a fascinating item. Now, you've seen this guy. This is William Friedman and Elizabeth Friedman. Now, in 1957, they are encouraged to publish this book, which they did not like the title of this, apparently, debunking their futile work in using cryptanalysis to find the secrets that is clearly aching to be found within the texts of Shakespeare. And they get given $1,000 and the Folger Library Shakespeare Award and the Freedom of Stratford-upon-Avon, and they're admonished for previously being such bad people. So let's just kind of summarise all this. This is a rather silly book. In 1915, Fabian wins his Bacon judgment, and 20 Looney publishes his EDV theory, and then in 1925, for some reason, Henry Folger buys the Edward de Vere Bible. Folger dies, and the library opens. So in 1945, the director of the Folger Library libels someone by, I think he calls him insane, for daring to be an Oxfordian, but daring to believe De Vere wrote Shakespeare. So he goes off and gets Charlton Ogburn, a lawyer, who I believe had never seen any of this before, to defend him, and of course he scares the living daylights out of them. They have to settle out of court. I'm sure Charlton got his full fee, and so did his clients get paid off nicely, and an apology printed, etc. Ogburn would go on to be a thorn in their side for the rest of his life. Now in 1957, Friedman publishes his Debunk, and things kind of carry on. By the time we get to the 80s, the De Vere Society is formed, and I'm sure the similar, the I don't know what it's called at the time, but the Shakespeare Oxfordian Foundation in the US will be gathering steam. Right, in 91, the library, the Folger Library, decides to put this nice Geneva Bible on display, which he doesn't seem to realise is festooned with all these markings. Elizabeth Holden, I believe, or somebody called Elizabeth, had seen this with somebody from the Folger Library. She sees Roger Stripmatter, who'd recently become a De Verean, if you like, an Oxfordian, or who's becoming increasingly interested in this, and they go off to see this Bible. 10 years later, it took Stripmatter 10 years to produce a PhD on this. It's his second PhD, so he was having a good go at it. Now, in 2011, the film Anonymous, which I don't know if you've heard of, is released, and kind of all hell breaks loose at that point. In 2013, this ridiculous book is produced by the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust. In 2014, this organisation are offered $40,000 to just go and sit in a kind of a Judge Judy court, and we'll get a question time audience in. We just want to cross-examine you. They're a registered charity. They don't want the money, and that's because they don't have any evidence. And you put them in any kind of court, and they will be in tatters. All they can rely on is saying, it's my belief. You may have heard that idea. I believe that this is working. So 2016, okay, so as far as I'm concerned now, it's over, right? And 2016, War, having de-encrypted the stones in Stratford, so we'd already got some pretty strong stuff, actually manages to crack that what I've just shown you, and the numbers have just gone at that point. There have been nearly 20 Stratfordian biographies of this form produced since the turn of the century. There is no new data in there. Nothing has been found out. Nothing new has been found out of any consequence about Shakespeare since the turn of the century. Rather amusingly, the De Vere Society produced this, which, as you can see, is a complete, piss take of that. So you could expect some kind of legal action, some kind of complaints, and they did want to complain, but they didn't in the end. And that's because, as I say, if they get anywhere near any kind of cross-examination, it doesn't really matter. It'll be worth doing just to get them into court. They will be in tatters. And I just noticed this is this nice book. So if you're interested in the history of this, then by all means, have a look at that. So what's the hell's going on then? This. Apparently there's nothing wrong with this. If you go to the Wikipedia page on this, a bit of controversy, but at the bottom it says that somebody or other from like 50 years ago says that Martin Druschouch, the guy that engraved this, is just rubbish. And so this is just he just hasn't done a very good left side. Now, what I like about this is that this here is a perfect form for the back panel. If you were making, that's what the rear of this would look like. If you kind of swung that round, this whole thing should be the back, right? And that's not an accident. You don't accidentally draw a crappy right side of him, or left side, whatever you want to say, as we look at him, that perfectly fits the back. Sorry, book club. And I know you just want to say, it was an accident. No, you can't have accidents like that. Now, all this stuff here, that's why I mentioned Apollo. No one's ever done a Jacobean ruff like this. You will not find that anywhere else. No one's ever done that. What are these here? What's all this shiny here? Well, it's Apollo. And when you do that, this mask really kind of lifts off. Now, this is nowhere near here, is it? And the reason that eye is so horrible to look at is because it's on the wrong side of the face. Those are two right eyes, or two left eyes as we look at them. So if I do that, I think that can now go on your wall. You can stick that, on the kitchen wall, and it's not going to get torn down. So where does that leave these poor people? The Shakespeare family from Stratford-upon-Avon, who are completely illiterate. You cannot prove to me that any of these people are literate. The grumpy little Bitchington here is positively illiterate. Her husband is recorded as being embarrassed at her illiteracy. And we have some scrawl from this lady, which has been purported as proof of literacy. But allow me to show you the complete and unabridged works of this man, as he's the only person that we've got anything approaching a signature from. And these are they. That is all we have. That is in manuscript form, the unabridged works of the Bard from Stratford-upon-Avon. That's probably your best. Starts to crack up later on. Maybe the S he's trying to do a fancy S. You really? This is a large building in London with lots of books in it. There is not a single author, not a single English author, who's got worse best handwriting. I don't want his credit card slip. Right? There is nobody in that building, no English author. You're not going to give me, and I don't want Helen Keller or something, whose handwriting is worse than William Shakespeare, who has less of a scriptural footprint than William Shakespeare. And certainly, as far as anybody that's associated with this, I mean, we it's not just that we have just their signature. We've got their handwriting. We've got letters that they've written. It's completely preposterous. So, in order to try and get to the bottom of why you don't know, I'm going to spend a little bit of time in what's virtually the dark net. This pathetic website, Oxford, so the clue of the level of debate that we're going to have here is in the domain name. The paper trail that proves Will was Will. Well, presumably it doesn't include Will's will, which has no punctuation in, no books, and no Shakespeare. As you know, Will's will is one of the major pieces of evidence for the prosecution against your client. So prima facie, I believe, means first glance. According to my calculations, I mean, I clawed and then text ripped and deduplicated this website. There's more text in here than the complete works of Shakespeare, so I don't know how first glance it is. But case, go and take a running jump, right? These people here, you know, they're going nowhere near a courtroom. I can be as rude to you people as I like, and you will not be going to court. Drafted by our legal team. So this page used to have 3 extremely unpleasant bios, including the pictures of the people that they have been trying to character assassinate. You know, underneath a domain name that says fraud. They've gone now, and we now have legal team. Well, hello, legal. Can we have a look at your cipher webpage? So this is the only webpage you need to look at. There's loads of other stuff in here, but it's kind of techno. But this stuff is stuff we can all assess, or you should be able to. So I just started with a nice picture here with a nice guy. With a caption, Ogburn's work on ciphers. Now, Ogburn, yeah, I've heard of him. Ogburn. That's not Ogburn. What's this? Oh, hang on a minute. Yeah, okay. So this is Tony Sale from the Science Museum, and he led the gang that kind of knocked up a bomb for us, a version of Colossus, and I think you can actually encrypt your own message and have it decrypted. I really do need to get there. Yeah, that's not Ogburn, that's Tony Sale. Now, this page is not even worth going through. I mean, essentially the only material in there is that I don't know who this is. They claim that Friedman has banned anagrams. I mean, essentially. The rest of it is just childish rubbish. And I can't, you know, it's obviously not anybody in the industry, but are you an English professor? Because you haven't proofread your stuff. It's appalling. Now, you know, there's punctuation errors and there's just. But we go to the bottom of the page. Yes, this is the bottom of the page. This is the same picture. So just being annoyed at the lack of imagination. We've then got underneath the real world of encryption and code breaking, and then in typeface that, you know, I mean, I can't read without blowing the page up, and it's in blue and what have you. We're paying homage to Tommy Flowers that nobody's heard of, nobody will have heard of if they looked at your page. I have to decide how indignant I want to be. Don't point my country's war history at me. You don't know what you're talking about. And it's very annoying. There's been some other stuff about denial. They've been quite careful on this website to get rid of that, but it has been used and it is not acceptable. This example is hilarious. I invite you to read it. If you don't get it or how stupid they've been, I mean, it's a counterexample. Right, so before we leave here, I actually need to point out Oxford's Bible. So, they got quite a lot of work here. This entire website is an assassination or an attempted one on two people, primarily Roger Stritzmatter and Alexander Waugh. In this Bible stuff, and particularly that is Stritzmatter, they mention the two of them in total over 1,000 times. Shakespeare, Shakespearean, and all forms of Shakespeare is only mentioned 2,500 times, and Oxfordian 1,500. The point about this, why this pathetic, cowardly website deserves taking down, is because it purports to be a forum, and yet they will not let these two scholars reply to them. I mean, you are cowards, right? But it's worse than that. You see, this man, Master of English, Sir Jonathan Bayes, right? Now, he's your go-to man for the BBC. Right, now, he's not just supporting this website. I mean, he's part of it, right? He regularly, actively, as soon as he's under pressure, because he doesn't know his stuff, do you? You're not a historian, mate. Squeals and says, go and have a look at Oxford's, this appalling website that it's not even proofread. This is the worst form of debate, if you like, to compare it to the kind of political claptrap that go on. I'm calling you a coward, Jonathan. The reviews of the Ross Barber Authorship MOOC are in. Ross Barber, they love the Ross Barber, isn't even an Oxfordian. I think she's a Marlovian. Maybe a Marlow-Oxfordian. But we've got John Dee here, and his naughty, wife-swapping, earless friend, Mr. Kelly. Let's crop this down a little bit, shall we, and get rid of Edward. Abysmal, unacceptable affront to scholarship. Whilst those quotes don't come from anybody of any relevance, they're just comments made on this website which they've just decided to use. I mean, you could have said that. These are not even academics, as I understand it. They're certainly not anybody that is prepared to engage in a debate. That just sums this website up. It is an abysmal, unacceptable affront to scholarship. You have to engage in debate. You have to allow people to respond on your website. But what I'm getting particularly indignant about is this. I think it's Gordellini or something, or Gordellino. He painted this in the 300 years after the event. Liz is looking particularly luscious here, isn't she? But it's this that I have to pick up on. Let me explain, book club. You won't touch him, will you? Right? He's one of the most sensible people ever. Well, he spent most of his life doing things very illegal, trying to find the Philosopher's Stone and being really weird. The cool stuff that he did, it is generally regarded, and you've got to ask people far more knowledgeable about these things than humble people as I. But John Dee's geometry and Francis Bacon's logic are fundamental precursors. They are, if you like, all over Principia Mathematica. Now, this book, which is John Dee's translation of the Elements, it's a slightly later copy. I can't find a 20th century cover of it, or early 20th century, but this is published in 1570. It's not replaced until 1908. In 1920, in English grammar schools, 350 years after its publication, this is still standard text. Everybody involved in navigation, everybody involved in higher education, everybody in the British Empire in any position of authority read John Dee's preface to Euclid. It's like part of the Bible or something. I mean, you know, it's I cannot think of an equivalent scientific text. But it's much deeper than this in terms of what John Dee means in British history. This is one of the most notable astronomers in all of history. We don't know, we still, you know, can't work out how Tycho managed to get such accurate results, because Isaac Newton hasn't invented the reflecting telescope for another 100 years, but he does. Now, in combination with John Dee, that's Dee's monad, and a very select, I think there's just 3 or 4 other mathematicians, these people come up with the Gregorian, now that we know that we're going around the sun, not the other way, and we can make much more accurate readings. Rather strangely, or ironically, it takes 150 years for the English, who are in the middle of their Brexit phase, to adopt this. But you know, now it's even deeper than that. That the 1593 Weights and Measures Act, we're now discovering that the actual precise numbers that we chose in there have deeply hermetic meanings, and that it looks like John Dee has decided the length and weight of everything. This is one of the most significant personalities in history, in all of history. Book club, you don't even know who your best author is. Right, why don't you know? Why has the national broadcaster not told you? These two gentlemen, who between the two of them account for, in my opinion, a full Attenborough's worth in history. I can't be much nicer to the pair of you, can I? I've both produced multi-part Shakespearean documentaries in the last 10 years. Now, on top of that, there was this claptrap, Cracking the Shakespeare Code. Well, I say it's claptrap. I mean, I watched it all. I mean, it really gets very tedious. But that's why I'm here, because you know, it intrigued me enough that whilst I wasn't happy with the answer, I wanted to find out some more. I don't really know what to say to the two of you. I mean, I can still vividly remember that sheepskin coat and your crumpety blue eyes and Boudica. I mean, yours isn't so bad, admittedly, Simon. I mean, it's well worth watching. And if you know actually what's going on, and we can edit the little bit of Stratford that you've got in it out. We've got a really good maths department in Manchester, mate. You need to pop in there. I'm not here to find out who your fucking author is. I'm ashamed to say. You know, yes, I know. I want to know what this England is that you speak of, but really, I'm just trying to find out who I am. Right, and you know, you're on the case here. So, you know, this is your watch. You both think that this is the most important personality in our history. Now, just to give you an idea of what we're missing, this is the De Vere family. Nobody's really quite sure what happens at Hastings, but there's an Anglo-Saxon report that Godwinson is just hacked to death, and we can have, Aubrey De Vere performing that role, if you want to write a fantasy about it all. But on the right, we've got the De Vere house, which is the oldest Norman keep. So we do have Shakespeare's house. Richard I went on tour, apparently. Principal Baron in Magna Carta. I mean, there's different personalities. John De Vere, the ex-Earl, is at Cressy, and then Robert is at Agincourt. I mean, either of those. I mean, but he was with the Black Prince at Cressy when his dad says, "Get on with it," let the boy win his spurs. And then finally, at this conflict, which culminates at the Battle of Bosworth, and Richard III being superseded by Henry VII, that doesn't happen without John de Vere, 13th Earl of Oxford, and I really like this. It's this corner. This bit is the de Vere crest, but I really love this with the triple crosses, the three crosses of the three crosses of the three crosses, and then the four three crosses. You go and look it up. At the beginning of the Tudor period, the prince, the head of the army, if you like, is John de Vere, 13th Earl of Oxford. We don't have a Tudor period without his military expertise. But then the man himself, Edward de Vere, is from this line of soldiers. He's a champion jouster. He's into falconry and all the posh stuff. Now, I've put this Ovid Metamorphoses on here, as Oxfordians insist that he translated much of Ovid. That's a point of contention, but as I don't believe a single thing that any Stratfordian says anymore, Marlovians claim that Marlowe translated a lot of Ovid, and I'm happy to listen to that. But certainly Ovid, if you know Shakespeare, Ovid's all over Shakespeare. Now De Vere goes on this expedition all the way to Venice and back, and that expedition in itself is a story. In all these posh households, he offers them out and. Says, I'm a champion jouster. Do you fancy a joust? Excuse me. He gets pirated on his way back, which turns up in one of your plays, doesn't it? Now, discussing exactly how important De Vere is within the 1580s and 1590s, and indeed and beyond, to in those 2 decades. In the Shakespearean world, in the world, in the Elizabethan world, is obviously highly technical, but appears to be absolutely massive. I mean, he is being paid by the state to drive this. How the hell have you missed this? But I just want to leave you with this, well, as far as this is concerned. This is Emery Molyneux's globe, and it is the first English globe and one of the very first globes of any kind on the planet. It would have been an absolute sensation. It came out in the mid-1590s and was made in London. This is built in the late 1590s. It's highly likely that is called after that. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it is. Which I just found fun. So, we're nearly done now. Let's just tie up with this man, and that wonderful portrait is in the National Portrait Gallery. This is the man that's responsible for Stratford and this stone. So this is a similar game. You play the same game with this, and this was de-encrypted prior to the sonnets, and it paints a key and says that Shakespeare is buried at Westminster Abbey. Now, Johnson, on that it says, "Stay, passenger, why goest thou by so fast? Read if thou canst." I mean, he's screaming for it, and to be solved. And when asked about this, why can't we find more stuff about Shakespeare, Johnson replied, "What never was will not easily be found." if you want to know more about this, the first place to go is here, and look at Alexander Wall's YouTube channel. There's a few other characters you can have a look at. David Shakespeare, who does the artwork. John Anthony. John's quite monotone. And does some fairly hairy cryptography. Alan Green is, I hope it's not with an E, is a D scholar, but that brings him into this, of course. I mean, I'm sure he knows his Shakespeare, and was responsible for parts of that cryptography. He sounds like Eric Idle, and I do enjoy his presentations, as I do the other two. But you can also go here, which is the Americanese version, and Don't Quill the Messenger is excellent. And there'll also be links to the Shakespeare Oxford Fellowships, many videos and lectures, including many by Roger Strittmatter in particular. And you've got the De Vere Society in the UK, and this guy you may have seen, and there's Mark Rylance and Pigott Smith and lots of people, and there. So and we end at this brick wall, because either I've just bounced off, or like me, you're now facing this brick wall where everybody else is going. I don't. What is it? We're in this world of psychoanalysis now. I mean, there's no argument about who was Shakespeare. The argument is now, well, who were the other Shakespeares? Because we know that there are hundreds and hundreds of books. We know there are multiple hands. We know that Shakespeare dies, or De Vere dies in 1604. So if you've got, gunpowder plot dripping from your cauldron, then we're going to have to work out why. But in conclusion, and I've done very well, I think I've hardly sworn at once, can I just say, Stratfordenses, ite domus. And if you would care to play John Cleese to my Graham Chapman and correct me in the most pedantic way possible, or rather my friend, I would be truly humbled. If you're an Oxfordian and you wish to swear at me in Latin, I'd be very grateful. Thanks.